Hey everybody, it is Kurt Molly and Jeff Schechter here, aka Shecky. Hey everybody, it is great to see you here. If you're watching live, great. We'll take some questions here in just a little bit. If you're watching the recording of this week's Monday on Blab or our SMAG Mob, this week we're going to be talking about affinity marketing. Now, affinity marketing is marketing to people in relevant groups or groups that are related. So let me give a very quick explanation of what we're doing. Now, if this is one of your first times of watching one of our blabs, make sure you check out the link that we've put over on the right-hand side. It's smag2.com/start-here. That'll take you over to the little intro page, let you know who we are. Basically, we spent millions on Facebook and on Google, and now from working with very high-end clients to just startups, we found some really important, crucial things, really, Shecky, as we'll call it, like a leaky bucket that in 2016, we really want to help entrepreneurs advertise online. So what we've been talking about, what we're calling our immersion training program over the next 90 days, is what we've codenamed the Social Media Ad Genius Profit Factory. Now, if you're brand new to us and you've never heard about us before, I highly encourage you, check out the welcome page here. You can go to YouTube, look up Social Media Ad Genius for a playlist. It'll tell you exactly what the profit factory is, but here's a 10,000 foot view where what we say is, hey, look, if you want to advertise online, you just got to have these four things. That's it. You got to have a product, service, or message that you can monetize. Shecky and I did a whole blab and training session all over what that should be. And the second thing is you got to figure out who your perfect avatar is. Who do you want to market to? Well, Shecky and I have done blabs and recordings of that as well. So remember, the blabs are free. And if you're part of our Social Media Ad Genius community, you'll get access to all of what we call the breakout trainings that happen every Wednesday, just more in-depth what we're talking about right now. Now, we're going to be talking about the Social Media Ad Genius Profit Factory. You'll find a video up on YouTube that talks about exactly what the Profit Factory is. And then the fourth, what we call the keystone, the fourth keystone to make all of this work, is we got to have proof. Everything that we're going to talk about, it's going to have to be trackable, right? How do we know if we're doing good or bad unless we can tie a number to it and make it trackable? Well, inside the Profit Factory, there's 12 steps. So again, that's keystone number 3. There's 12 steps. First step, figure out an avatar. Shecky and I have already done a video on that. The next step from there, now what's really interesting is now we got to start talking about targeting. And we're talking about either what we refer to as interest clusters, and Shecky and I have both agreed we want to get better on this language. We want to talk about affinity marketing. So what we've done is you've already identified that you have a product, service, or message. You've identified your perfect avatar. Now we want to talk about affinity marketing. So Shecky, would you mind telling everybody, because I know you've been working on the presentation, I sent you over like a Wikipedia link as well too. There is core target marketing and affinity marketing. Which comes first, and what's the difference between the two?
It's a great question, Kurt. I'm getting a little bit of an echo here. Sorry. Hang on 1 second.
Is that
most people, it's okay. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you perfectly fine, yeah.
Okay, cool. So when somebody first starts out with their marketing, initially they're going for their core audience, right? So they're trying to figure out who is this perfect person? You know, we walk people through these avatar exercises and we say, look, define it down to one person. And there's some really good reasons for that. Go ahead.
Let's just use an example of, let's just say an online yoga retreat. So who would be your core audience? We're using the example of an online yoga retreat.
Okay, well, so obviously the people that do yoga are typically females. Most likely they're probably between age 30 and 40. They're obviously have some disposable income and some time flexibility. You might even think that many of them would be moms and maybe their husbands are working, and that might be why they have that time flexibility. So you can glean certain things about that are pretty obvious. So when we start talking about income and the direct targeted interest and geography and things like that, those are what I would call the big pieces of the core audience, right? I mean, they're really what I would say they're obvious. Okay, they're not necessarily what I would call affinity. What's interesting about this week's topic is that it's an area where a lot of people are missing out on. So what's happening is they're taking this target audience, right? And they're going right from there to say, oh, I want to really get to this sexy stuff where I get into like, lookalike audiences and custom audiences and pixels and all that. And all that stuff's great and fantastic. And we're going to talk about all that stuff. But the key piece to leveraging your way up to that is within affinity marketing. So if you were to look up what affinity really means, right? And there's a number of different definitions. We're going to cover this in greater detail on Wednesday. But if you look up what it means, it just definitely means like a relationship, a likeness, a connection, right? So let me use the yoga example because that's a really good one. So if somebody were into yoga, there is a great likelihood that they would also be into, say, physical fitness. There's a great likelihood that they would probably be in, like most people that I know that are into yoga are very spiritual people. So they're probably into some element of spirituality. There is a piece of yoga that has also a lot to do with personal development. That's a huge niche, right? And obviously even to say like this might be a bit of a stretch, but a lot of people that I know that are into yoga are also very socially conscious people, right? So this is another huge related niche, right? So people that are wanting to, better a cause, physical fitness, all these things I mentioned. So these would be considered affinity relationships to the core of that yoga person.
So let's back up for just a minute. I just want to walk through everybody through a little bit a different explanation that really complicates it that really complements, Shecky, what you just said. So just a couple of things is, we've already spent time talking about who your perfect avatar is, right? And let's make sure that we talk about one thing that's extremely important here. And that is Facebook, Google, all these other social networks. Remember, they want to make sure that the people who click on your ad, that it's congruent to what they would be searching or looking for, right? Congruent. So we spend a lot of time target your core audience. Let's really figure out who that core person is. But the key to scaling your business, I'm going to be very honest and direct with you. The key to scaling your business is not actually your core audience. Your core audience is going to help lay down the foundation. See, what happens is if we really target and focus on who that core avatar, that core audience is, now what's going to start to happen, like Shecky says, he's going to make some assumptions or best guesses. And we all know what an assumption can be the acronym for, right, or can stand for, but we're going to test and verify. So let's say that we have a yoga retreat that's going on. So we are targeting people who like yoga. Duh. Well, Shecky said there's a large percentage of women. Okay, we're going to go ahead and test that. Well, they may also be interested in, maybe they purchase green smoothies. So maybe the same type of demographic, they may like green smoothies and fitness, like Shecky said. That could be close to yoga. They could be interested in that. So that is what we call affinity marketing. It's a close to group. So imagine this being a big old circle. Here's your core. Here's your affinity marketing. See, we want to be able to expand on this core marketing, because when we're able to scale our ads over time and scale our business, we want to be able to have a larger market that we can market to. The problem is what a lot of entrepreneurs do is they try to really narrow on down who their avatar is, and it produces a really small market. They'll be like, hey, Kurt, I spent $300 and I can't really seem to spend anymore. If we're able to really back up to start doing the affinity marketing where we're targeting some of those similar groups, this is what we've called interest clusters in the past, or what really the true definition is affinity marketing. When you use affinity marketing work, and this is what's really going to be shown in the breakout session, Shecky's done a great job on this presentation, to where when we have affinity marketing, the next step, so what we're doing is, remember, we set up all the tracking pixels from Google and from Facebook. So they're seeing, Facebook and Google are seeing who are the core people who are coming to my page. And then we started targeting that affinity, that next bigger layer. Now, Google and Facebook are seeing who's coming to my page, who's clicking through my website, who's opting in, who's buying. And Shecky alluded to it earlier. This is where people start to, after you have enough transactions, enough people have landed on your page, typically meaning 150 or more, Now you create from that core audience and now from that core audience and from that Affinity audience, now you create a lookalike or similar audience. That's really where you can start to scale your business. But see, what starts to happen is as the ads become automated and you're able to start to scale your business, your ads have to be relevant to the person on the other end of the screen. So we know who the core is. If we logically go through some of these steps, and we'll go through some of this training here in a couple of ideas, if you know who your core is and you're targeting your core and all the tracking pixels are set up with Google, we went over that with Chris Mercer. So if you're watching this recording, look for the recording we did with Chris Mercer with tracking your ads. So you set it up in Google, you set it up tracking inside of Facebook so you can retarget. Now they're learning who's coming to your site. Now we're going to start talking about that Affinity audience, targeting a little bit more. We're getting a little more diversified. But again, Google and Facebook are learning with those pixels because, man, when you turn on that similar audience and you start doing the lookalike audience, what Google has what they call in-market audience, I mean, Shecky, that's where we've seen our clients, their business really take off. But what people can't do is they can't skip a step. Like you can't figure out your core target, create a similar audience because you have an email list, and then try to do some affinity marketing. You must start with the core and get your numbers, know what your core numbers are, test out your affinity, see if your affinity can beat your core, and always see if your similar audiences can beat your core numbers. So, yeah, Shecky, how many times you've talked to lots of people with their funnels? How many times do you see? So, ideally, this is the way we want to scale our business, right? We want to scale it not necessarily too fast. We want to do it smart. How many people do you see that try to do similar audience or optimize for conversion, or how many people do you see skip this process and don't focus on that affinity that you and I just talked about?
Well, it's a common problem. And here, I talk to a lot of people and here's what I see happening is I think we all recognize that when it comes to creating any audience to advertise to, right? There's a tug of war that's happening. So when you have things really, really, really dialed in, you end up with this little tiny audience, right? And it doesn't really give you much to advertise to. So we see some people that are, you obviously want to say something because I see your finger.
Well, because remember, and please, Shecky, touch on this, because remember, old Facebook trainings were, if you can narrow down your audience, you're going to have great targeting. And that's no longer the case, if you wouldn't mind touching on that.
Right. No. So here's what's happening. So you'll get the people that are like super niche down. Like they do this, hey, like my avatar is this, and they get to like this one female who's 37.2 years old, who's got exactly 2.7 kids, and she lives just outside the suburbs of Nashville. Right. So the audience is just incredibly tiny, but this marketer is very proud of themselves for having done a really great job dialing in. Okay. Good for you. That's great. But now you don't have much of an audience. And this is where they start. So it's very hard to expand from there. On the other side, then we have the people that I would say are lazier. They don't do as good a job of defining their core audience. And they say, well, it's probably just women in the US who may be like over 30. Okay. It's just not enough.
Way too wide.
And so there, as I was starting to say, there's this constant tug of war that goes on between targeting and size of audience, right? So the more targeted you are, the smaller your audience is. So the trick is when you start is to create some sort of balance there. In other words, get some pretty good demographics for your initial audience, right? I mean, you want to have some good definition. I mean, obviously, you've already defined your avatar, so you know they're going to fit into this core audience, right? But put it in such a way that you still have a halfway decent size. You're not so niche down that you've eliminated anybody to advertise to, right? That's a really, really good starting point. So we see a lot of people making that mistake initially because of that tug of war. The next mistake that's made is obviously just completely eliminating affinity marketing altogether. They go, like I was saying earlier, they want to go right from core to all the sexy stuff, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I understand that. But when you start adding these affinity groups and you're able to actually test that and say, oh, wow, I'm starting to see that the women who are interested in spirituality are really resonating with this message. That's a good interest group. I'm starting to see that the other women that are really interested in personal development are really resonating with this too, and the ones who are interested in physical fitness. So what starts happening is you start expanding your audience based on related interests that are not exactly the same, but it allows you to get a broader base of people to advertise to, so that when you get to that sexy stuff, man, you've got something really, really good. You've got this way bigger audience that still really, really resonates with what you're doing. And it's unfortunate that either the start gets messed up somehow or the middle step of affinity marketing gets messed up. But when you do those pieces correctly, and it's not hard to do, and we're going to cover that in more detail on Wednesday, obviously, but when you do that correctly, wow, I mean, it's just so much leverage to be able to scale up. I mean, you know, as you know, Kurt, from all the stuff we've done in the agency, probably one of the most difficult tasks that we're assigned to do is to take a business that's already doing well and scale it up. I mean, to get it has to be done correctly, but it's not always the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, it has to be done correctly. Like a lot of times, you know, a lot of entrepreneurs think, and I've had a lot of clients who will say, hey, look, Kurt, I put in $1,000, I made $2,000. So next month I want to put in $50,000 to make $100,000. And I'm like, it doesn't necessarily go like this, right? Unfortunately, or fortunately, there is no dial that says, oh, I put in $1 and it makes $2. Great, I turn it really fast. See, what Google and Facebook both have in common, and I say both Google and Facebook all the time, because a lot of these social media sites are following the same trend. All they want to make sure is that your information is 100% relevant to the other person on the other end, right? And really, if you just turn up advertising from $1,000 a day to $4,000 a day, it can really almost look like it's spamming, right? All of a sudden, if you're targeting too narrow of an audience, they see the same ad over and over and over. Imagine driving down the interstate for an hour and seeing the same billboard 14 times. Like, it's really going to annoy you, and it's really not going to help either the advertiser, and it's really not going to help the platform on Facebook either. The main reason being is because they see the same ad over and over. So the reason that we want to do the reason for the targeting, the reason that we want to focus on the core, number one, is remember with tracking in place with Facebook and Google are going to start to show us, well, I know I'm targeting 35 to 55-year-old male and female, but I see that 80% of the people coming to my site are female. I should probably pay attention to that. And the affinity marketing groups, which we'll cover again more on Wednesday in our breakout session. So if you're watching the recording, you can, if you're part of the social media ad genius family, you can just go ahead and jump in and watch the recording of our breakout session, or make sure if you're not a part of the SMAG family, we'll give you a link, or Nick, if you could put a link in here right now so people can join the breakout session. And again, the breakout session for everybody else is just where we go into much deeper detail than the conversation right here. So what ends up happening is once you focus on your core audience, we're going to start setting up retargeting, right? So we're targeting 35, 55-year-old male and female that go to, that like yoga, and they're going to go to our website. Well, we're going to set up retargeting ads from our website, either it being on Facebook or Google or what other site that you want to use for retargeting. Now we're starting to learn more about our audience. Now, when we start to learn more about our audience, our age, demographic, where they may be from, or where they may be from, it's good proper English, where they may reside from, right? Or if they're using a mobile phone or whatever, then we can go into audience insights inside of Facebook. This is something that we're going to show you on our Wednesday breakout. See, inside of audience insights on Facebook, one of the amazing things is if you have the right audience dialed in, Facebook will give you the affinity groups. That would be that these people may be married, they may be single, they may have kids, they may have 3 kids, they may drive an SUV, they may rent. See, there's actually a way that when you focus on your core marketing and you start collecting data, the affinity marketing is actually pretty simple to start breaking down. But if you do the core marketing and the affinity marketing properly, then Facebook and Google, they're going to see that right related traffic. Because Shecky, we've said this over and over and over. Just because someone says no now or says no to your message doesn't mean that they don't resonate with your overall theme and that they won't say no or they won't say yes till later. Now, Shecky, we've talked about these affinity groups, and I know people try to jump around sometimes and they miss it, but you got to get the core. You got to get the affinity. What would be some problems that you would see people run into if they didn't spend the time to look at their affinity marketing? Like, what would you see that, or what have you seen that people run into problems that they don't focus on at least testing affinity marketing?
Well, it's obviously gonna parlay into ineffective ad campaigns. I mean, that's the shortcut answer. But what happens is you're not like here's what happens. I talk to people on the phone all the time, and they're trying to say, look, I understand that platforms like Facebook and Google have this artificial intelligence, right? So what I can hear it in the back of the mind, what they're saying to me is they're going, Shecky, I want to be lazy. I want to let these platforms, they've got all this great technology, let them do the stuff that they're supposed to do, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and put in these basic demographics, and I'm going to scale right to all this other stuff and let these guys just do what they're good at. The problem is this, is the best analogy I can give you is what happens is when you go to these bigger audiences and you go and you put in your tracking and you use the artificial intelligence, there is certainly a measure of improvement, right? But it's coming from a standpoint where you didn't have good knowledge about your audience or the sweet spots of your audience initially, right? So you're basically essentially, you're going from kind of crappy to mediocre, right? And you're paying a premium for that on top of it. Conversely, if you're not lazy and you say, hey, look, I'm going to really learn more and I'm going to do some testing with affinity marketing, I'm going to see what other groups are related. By the time you move to that area where you're going for lookalike audiences or going to in-market as it would be on Google, you're much more dialed in as far as what your audience is going to resonate with. And you're also dialed in with a bigger audience. So now when you offset that to Facebook or Google or whatever platform you're using, when you offset that, you're basically marrying what you know with their technology. And it's a really, really powerful combination. And what happens is instead of going from to mediocre, you're going from good to great. So there's a really, really compelling reason, not to be lazy on this step. And I want to just mention one other thing, Kurt, because you talked about audience insights as an example. And so what's really cool nowadays is, like, for marketers, if you just understand this concept, that's really all there is to this lesson. It's not as difficult as it sort of makes, affinity sounds like a really fancy word, right? But it's really a pretty simple concept. And what's great is there's so many great tools out there that are your friend that make it super easy. Like I'm not always the kind of person, like Kurt and I'll sit and we'll brainstorm and I'll throw out like some of the craziest ideas and Kurt will shoot them down. And every once in a while he'll go, oh yeah, that's actually not bad. But so brainstorming is a good way to do this with a fellow marketer, right? Somebody who's not going to necessarily judge you, just to throw out some different ideas of what you think affinity groups might look like for your particular avatar. But you can use things like Facebook's Audience Insights, which essentially allows you to create your own audience and play around with all this stuff. You can put in all these different parameters and it'll show you sizes of audience and all the other related affinity groups. So it will actually give you ideas. It will brainstorm for you, right? So it's actually a pretty easy step. Don't skip it.
Yeah, it's one of these things that's like, one of the things for 2016 is, hey, look, if you are old, I've said this speech so many times. If you're already spending money, right? Meaning spending money on ads. That typically means you have a product, service, or idea that you want to monetize. You've already started talking about who your avatar is. You started to write ads. You did a website. You got a marketing plan. Like, you've spent a lot of time. So sending over those initial clicks over to your website and not retargeting or learning from them, meaning not having Google Analytics set up, or not having Facebook tracking set up. You've already spent all this money to get all this traffic in. And Shecky, I mean, we've seen it over and over. People will spend money, they'll get the traffic in, nothing happens for a week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, and they stop. And I'm like, no, never stop running traffic. If you have your core audience that you're marketing to, pretty soon your website will start to tell you through Google Analytics who specifically is coming over to your website. Now, the other thing is if you're running ads long enough, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, you can go in and you can look at your ads, and we're going to be covering this when we start talking about reporting in the next couple of weeks. But you can actually see, oh, wait a minute, women 35 to 45 is my best audience, and they use iPhones. 90% of the people who click on my audience click from iPhone. So why advertise anywhere else? Now we can start to get a little bit more granular. But when we're running these affinity audiences, this next level of audiences, we got to be able to have a larger target. But here's what's important to remember. We're already sending traffic to our website. Let's make sure that we can, who's coming to the website? That should really be set up with Google Analytics, right? Who's actually clicking on the ads? We're going to be able to find that with inside of Facebook as well too. Google's actually going to give us some recommendations when we've run enough traffic of who are these people, where may they be? And we can actually go inside of Audience Insights inside on Facebook and start choosing like 35 to 55-year-old women who are entrepreneurs who like online marketing and yoga. That could be a niche too, right? So this affinity marketing keeps on getting larger. Now, with retargeting and similar audiences, when we're sending this original traffic over here, not only are we learning who's coming, who's clicking on the ads and targeting the right people, but now what ends up happening is we can start using, after all this happens, we can start using Facebook conversion pixels to optimize for the pixel, optimize for the conversion, follow up with retargeting like we would follow up with email marketing. See, here's the thing. If you're doing affinity marketing, let's just say yoga, and if you're targeting people who like green smoothies and fitness, but maybe not yoga, they may land on the yoga page and they might not like yoga. Well, we took a guess, and I guess we thought it was close, but some people might not be interested in yoga. But if we retarget that group, because let's say that this group is a yoga group, but they also talk about nutrition, the very next thing that they may sell could be a 30-day nutritional cleanse with green smoothies. That goes perfect with that affinity audience and actually goes pretty well with the yoga audience as well too. They probably, like Shecky said, have a high affinity for nutrition and even self-development. So what ends up happening is this, Shecky, you and I have talked about this a bunch, but people put in all this effort to get traffic there. You want to make sure that you're retargeting it. But you also remember they're not going to say no. Just because they say no now doesn't mean they're going to say no forever. So if you have different blog posts like we have every week, or new content like we have every week, or they have additional, very important, additional products and services. So upsells, downsells, they have additional products and services. Just because they didn't buy yoga or they didn't buy green smoothies, down the road, they actually may buy a 30-day challenge on a cleanse because it's all related topics. Shecky, here's something else for you. How many people, so we talked about affinity marketing. How many people do you see do proper affinity marketing and core marketing and then retarget it with ads and or follow-up emails to offer extended products and services? So how many people do you see follow up because of their affinity marketing with additional products and services?
Well, it's not a very big percentage. And again, that's just another one of those leaky buckets. I talked to a man this morning in the UK who is actually, he's a newbie, but he's starting to do pretty well. Like, I mean, he's really got a pretty good understanding, very, very sharp guy. And I just made a couple of suggestions of possible affiliate promotions within his niche. I mean, it wasn't rocket science, you know. It was just like, well, if they're already interested in this topic, right, they're going to be interested in this as well too. And he was like, wow, no, we never really even considered that. So this is the language, like, we never considered it, right? Well, I want to encourage you, consider it, because I think what ends up happening is people get so hung up on their own product, service niche and their own little avatar that this is what they're focusing on. right? And so what happens is they don't understand that we're all human beings. We all have more than one little interest, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're interested in a lot of different things, right? But if we're interested in this particular subject, there might be a number of other things, even just within that subject, that we're interested in.
Mm-hmm.
So hence, therefore, ergo, why would we not put in, look for, even if it's an inexpensive affiliate product? Or, we were joking around today. It's like there is an information product for literally everything.
There really is.
If you want to learn how to pick your nose the right way, I am sure that there's an information product for that, right? It's ridiculous. However, the good news about that is there's probably some decent information product that's related to your specific niche that will benefit your audience.
That's the one word. Now, just to be clear, you can be, I'll just be very open and use foul language. You can be a douchey marketer and just send out an email every single day offering something else to buy, right? I just think that's being a douche. But I just want to be very, very clear. I do believe you should be offering something of value. And if someone buys it, they have a higher probability of implementing it. So to be perfectly clear, if you have an offer, let's just say I'm going to take an example like our offer, Social Media Ad Genius. For those of you who don't know who we are, we've run millions of dollars on Facebook. We have an ad agency. We've documented all of our processes we've used for celebrities, reality TV stars, professional sports teams, speakers, authors, small businesses, large businesses. We've compiled all of our trainings and we've really broken it down step by step so we can show you how any business can advertise on Facebook and scale traffic, right? We've sold our course all around the world. We've sold it thousands of times. We have thousands of community members. We like to call SMAG family members. We have hundreds of testimonials. It's great. Well, a friend of mine that I met at a conference that worked with another friend of mine, he teaches LinkedIn strategies. His name's Josh Turner. We're actually going to have him on a Blab in a couple of weeks. Josh Turner is brilliant. Hey, I love our SMAG community members. I love them just like family. That's why we call them family members. Now, we offer Josh Turner services. Like I see Daniel over here giving me props, which I appreciate, Daniel. I've been working with Daniel for years. Amazing individual to work with. But Daniel knows this about us. It's like, hey, we love training on Facebook. But, man, I'm impressed with Josh Turner. I want to make sure that I tell my audience about Josh Turner. Now, I'm going to make a commission if he sells anything. But quite honestly, and I remember Daniel, he bought Josh Turner stuff. But I know people who bought or invested with Josh Turner that have had great results. I've bought Josh Turner stuff. So when we're finding an affiliate product, you should always be selling your list something that they can use, that's relevant and congruent, and that it's worked, that you've actually tried as well too. So for us, we love running Facebook ads. We do some LinkedIn ads. But we're not the experts at it. We don't have an agency at it. We have run it for clients. Josh Turner's great. Now, Josh Turner's kind of one of those celebrities, right? Well, here's another thing that you can do. Shecky, we've seen this before. We've done this before in the past. You can look up PLRs, private label rights. So PLR copywriting, PLR ad creation, PLR doghouse, private label rights. They're a document or even videos or training programs. Oh, Shecky, that's great. I guess we've never used the board behind you. This is great. So, Shecky, that's over to the left too far. We can only see LR, just to let you know. Shecky? Ooh, there you go. You're like, I can fix that. PLR. So you can actually type in PLR and then anything in your niche. You can actually buy the rights to put your name on it. Now, there's a lot of good stuff and there's a lot of crap. So just make sure that if you're going to do our PLR, by the way, no one ever notices that you bought a PLR and just put your name to it. But you can actually edit some of the content. Like they have everything put together. It's just kind of like a template you can put your name to. But just look through it. Make sure it always serves your audience. We like to do those for great $7 offers. It teaches people something. We have a little bit of our own insight in there. But what happens is let's go back to yoga. Because we have that core audience and we have that affinity audience, they might not like yoga. That next week, they might not like green smoothies. That next week, they might not like the 30-day challenge. But that next week after that, you may advertise to them on a blog. We'll go back to what Shecky says about spirituality and how to become more enlightened with yourself. Now, all of a sudden, that may work. But remember, if I'm running my retargeting from my core audience and my affinity, my audience just keeps building and building and building and building. And Shecky's seen this before. We've worked with so many entrepreneurs where this happens. Now, all of a sudden, they send out one email, one blog post, one retargeting ad about one special offer that they have running right now. And that's where you hear people making 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, 6,000, 10,000 plus a day with their right specials because they've constantly followed up. They've never stopped running traffic. And I mean, Shecky, I don't mean to sit here and preach, but like that affinity market can really help you scale your business as long as people just don't start and stop with that core. I mean, man, that affinity market, because once you start doing the retargeting in similar audiences, man, screw up the core and affinity market, those similar audiences are going to be crap.
Yeah, agreed. And I know that we've got, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I know that, as far as our agency and the agency play, it's interesting because it seems to me that oftentimes we get entrepreneurs come to us that say, hey, I want you guys to help us scale our business.
Right.
And almost every time that we go and look through their funnel or the way that they've built their audience, they've definitely missed some stuff on affinity marketing. Okay, granted, these guys are making a lot of money already. They've got good emails in place. They're good storytellers. They're consistent. They're spending money, things like that. But I will tell you guys, even the big guns, big names that don't always get this right. And it's really not that hard to get right. So we come in and we say, okay, let's go back. Let's take a step backwards. Let's look at your core audience. Let's look at some of the affinity groups that you've had. It's like, oh, well, why wouldn't you have tested going to a physical fitness niche? Why wouldn't you have tested going to a spirituality? It's like, they're like, well, it's not really exactly related to what we do. And it's like, but you don't know that. And to quote Kurt, this guy over here, nothing is true until it's been tested and verified. So, I've learned the hard way, admittedly, that it's important to test this stuff. So, if you're a fairly new marketer, you're probably going, well, I just want to test one headline against another. Great, you should. I want to test one call to action against another. Absolutely, you should do that too. I want to test one storyline against another. I want to test one picture against another. Exactly. But why then would you not want to test one audience against another, one interest group against another? Because the result of that test gives you such a gargantuan insight into the big picture of what's going on in your market. It's just really, it should not be overlooked. So anyway, so we come in, with the agency play and just say, well, let's go back into this a little bit and start testing some of these affinity groups. And almost invariably, we will come up with something. It doesn't necessarily mean we come up with 100 things, but we will come up with something that this advertiser had never considered before. And there will be something that we tested that fires. And now all of a sudden, boom, we've got a bigger audience.
So remember, right? One of the things, if you go back to watch any of the recordings from the Profit Factory that we've talked about, we've talked about in a 12-step process. We're really on step number 2 of the Profit Factory. And the first one is identify your core audience and who that is. The next thing is identify what we call 4 different interest clusters or 4 different affinity audiences. So what that is that's going into actually audience insights. Again, we're going to talk about more of this in the breakout session that we have on Wednesday, more of the deep dive. See, Facebook will actually give you stats to say, hey, your group that has visited your website or your email list, your group has the 3.6 times affinity compared to the rest of the people on Facebook that they like sports. Oh, they like sports. Like Facebook will actually tell you the affinity of where people are at. This is where the term affinity marketing comes into. Now, again, this is going to help really with scale. But what Shecky really talks about is people coming into the agency. And what we do is we want to run, remember our motto, long-term, scalable, predictable income. Now, if I just target just a core audience, I may have what we call ad blindness, or as Daniel put in here, audience contamination. Everybody's seeing the same ad all the time, over and over and over. So what we do is when we start expanding on that audience, we can start testing out some different ads. But remember, when people opt into your email, you're going to be able to follow up with people, right? But with retargeting, it's the same thing if someone opts in. So if you have these larger groups of people, now we're going to start talking about extended products and services, because you never want to stop following up with email. You never want to stop following up with retargeting ads. So when planned properly and quantified, what's going to happen is we're going to know step by step where the leaky holes in the bucket. So what we're focusing on and training on this week is the affinity marketing. So people have their core audience. We train that. What is that next affinity step? Because what starts happening as of next week, we start talking about, okay, let's start turning on these ads. Now, remember, what we're teaching here is really universal. It can work on Facebook. This can work on Twitter. This can work on LinkedIn. Because once you have your core audience, well, the thing is core audience, you can target LinkedIn, Twitter, or Facebook. Great. But Facebook's going to help you with the affinity audience. Again, you can go into audience insights we're going to talk about. Now you can do an affinity audience. Well, Facebook's going to tell you, well, these types of people also like this. You can use that in LinkedIn. You can use that in Twitter. So once you learn that the affinity marketing just isn't related to just Facebook audience insights, but you use Facebook's insights on other ad networks, now what we start doing is we say, okay, on Facebook, we're targeting people who like yoga. And the affinity group, we're targeting people who like nutrition. And an affinity group, we're targeting people who like spirituality and yoga as well too. Great, we're going to run that. Well, we may find, well, wait a minute. Spirituality is actually doing really well on LinkedIn for our yoga program. But yoga is working out really well on Facebook. But what's interesting is nutrition is working out really well on Twitter for our yoga. We wouldn't have ever come up with any of those ideas if we didn't look inside of Facebook Audience Insights. So remember, what we're teaching in the Profit Factory isn't just Facebook. It's universally how you use that same information. And Shecky, I don't know about you, but I mean, you've owned multiple businesses. You've done marketing for a long time. We've both been in online marketing for a while. And once we started looking at these similar audiences, stuff like that Facebook does, I started actually looking at names. We were talking about this the other day, and I'm like, oh, Affinity, wait a minute, we've been doing affinity marketing for the last couple of years. Didn't really know like that it was actually named that. And now that I think about it, Shecky, when is the last time in your entire entrepreneurial endeavors or marketing career that you've spent and focused time with a core audience and thinking about affinity or even knowing what that next level was? How many other businesses have you ever used affinity marketing in?
Admittedly, it hasn't been a lot. This is stuff that. Well, I mean, we've done it in the agency, and you bring up two good points, and I'm going to circle back to the second one. But we've done a lot of it just by way of brainstorming, and this word affinity marketing has been around for a while, but within the online community, it's obviously becoming a pretty big buzzword right now. And so, we were doing it for clients, things like that, but in my own businesses. No, it wasn't until I really started getting deeper into the online marketing that I started really gaining an understanding of how powerful this could really be. And Kurt, I want to give you kudos because you just said something just now that I don't know if people really picked up. I'm going to click my little button and give you kudos right here. But it's the whole cross-pollination across other platforms. There's so many marketers that miss this, and to say, look, if I learned that these affinities work on Facebook, why could I not take that data and go use it to my advantage over on LinkedIn or over on Google or over on Twitter or Pinterest or whatever, right? Because obviously the connection's there. You've proven it with some testing. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work exactly the same way with the exact same metrics on another platform. But it does mean there's a high likelihood that you're going to make a base hit with that on another platform.
Yeah,
right? So just kudos to you for bringing that up because I think a lot of people miss that.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I mean, one of the things is like I was talking to a client the other day and I'm like, hey, look, like you have to have Google Analytics installed. You just have to. And they go, Kurt, if I'm targeting 35 to 55-year-old male and female in the United States who are entrepreneurs, like it's just going to tell me the same thing. And I'm like, no, dude. Here's the thing is you may find out that 35 to 55-year-old entrepreneurs, but 75% of them may be male. And of those 75%, they may be in 7 metropolitan cities. That's it. Like that's
Right.
meaning that that's all your audience. Meaning that if you're advertising here, it doesn't matter because only 10% of the people here are actually seeing those ads. Just advertise just here. And what's going to happen is when you're watching through Google Analytics, and again, as we start covering this more in depth, but you're going to see, okay, you're targeting 30 to 55-year-olds, entrepreneurs, United States, great. Well, wait a minute. 95% of the people who come to my website are on using iPhones. Oh, I should make sure my website is iPhone compatible. Oh, I'm just only going to advertise to iPhones then for mobile. Oh, wait a minute. 50 to 55-year-olds, I see actually don't check out. My biggest checkouts that we have, people actually buying our products, which we see in Google Analytics after a couple of months, is we see they're really 35 to 50-year-olds. Okay, so let's only start narrowing that target market down. So what happens is you have your core marketing, you have your affinity marketing, but with all the tracking, they start learning who's actually buying. You look inside of your analytics. Analytics, again, it's just like another dial where you're saying, wait a minute. I didn't realize they're only in these 7 metropolitan cities on an iPhone, and they only buy, and typically people are only clicking on my ads this time of day. Now, instead of doing what most people do, I'm just going to target this market and just let it run. I don't know, Shecky, I put in $1,000. I know I got one sale and I made $500, but I don't know where it came from. Now you start finding out, well, wait a minute, 35 to 55-year-olds in 7 cities, Monday through Thursday, typically buy between 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. So now I only run ads then. Now all of a sudden, instead of putting in $1 and making $1.05, you're putting in $1 and making $1.60 on your front end. So if you're retargeting along the way and you have extended products and services, I mean, Shecky, I've never seen a time like now, because really, if we start taking a look at these core audiences, similar audiences, we start retargeting, I mean, now you can follow up to say, now I have a blog that just came out. Now I have a Blab that just came out. I mean, Shecky, what would you do as an internet marketer 4 years ago if I said, hey, look, if you never stop running ads and you run let's say $30 to $40 a day in Facebook ads, I can show you after 4 or 5 months how to retarget 100,000 people who never opted in to your offer. But I'll show you how to run ads to people that clicked on your offer but never opted in for pennies.
Yeah. Fantastic. Bring it on.
There's no other process out there. And again, most people are they give up too soon because they only target to just their core. They're not setting up these retargetings. But these affinity audiences, Shecky, I mean, I really do. I believe they're changing the course of how we as entrepreneurs market. And I believe it's giving us a lot more options, especially if we can learn about these on, inside of like Google Analytics or Audience Insights. Like we've never had access to this kind of information as entrepreneurs, especially for free.
Yeah, it's interesting. The tools and technologies that are out there are just phenomenal. And I think that this is where people get hung up a little bit on it. First of all, they're not that difficult to use. You can see all my gray hairs. I mean, I'm a baby boomer and, I'm involved in this industry. So if I can do it, first of all, anybody can do it because I'm not Joe Tech Boy.
Yep.
And secondly, what's interesting too is, in the people that I talk to, people are very freaked out about the amount of competition and the amount of advertisers that are out there. Okay, so the reality is, yes, there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of competition for eyeballs. But the stuff that we're showing you right now, there's very few marketers that really get this or understand how this works. So the beauty of being part of the SMAG family is you can become an elite marketer. You can gain an understanding of these concepts and you can start learning how to use these tools to put yourself light years ahead of the competitors, right? Like, because what ends up happening with a lot of new advertisers, they buy some product, they go, okay, I'm going to promote I'm going to try and think of a good example. I'm going to think of something geographical. Let's say that they put out, they have a hot springs, right? and it's a natural hot springs, and they want to get people to come to their hot springs, right? So the newbies and the people that don't understand these sort of dialing in concepts and all this are basically placing a billboard on IH-35 where there's gazillions amount of traffic for people that might have to make 6 other turns before they get to the hot springs. Okay. And they spend a gajillion dollars for that because there was a lot of traffic going by. Or they could say, hey, I'm going to figure this out. What roads are people taking? What are the kinds of cars they're driving? And they're finally putting up a billboard that's literally 20 miles outside of the hot springs, and that road goes right by there. But that billboard only shows to the kinds of cars that would be interested in driving to the hot springs, right? So which advertiser do you think is going to have a better, more effective billboard, right? Right. So yeah, I mean, you could say that the one on the big interstate was like, oh, well, we got a lot of eyeballs, we got a lot of exposure, and it's like, okay, that's great. So what? You know?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's really like, how many people can we prove and track from that billboard came to our hot springs and jumped in? Because that's what we're looking to do.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
And so just don't be afraid of the tools, because there's stuff there that can make you an absolute ninja. And it's just a matter of learning. We're teaching this piece by piece, and we're going step by step in a very, very methodical way so that none of this is overwhelming to you. Like if it's not overwhelming to a baby boomer like me, I can assure you, whoever you are on the other side of this recording or live presentation, it's not going to be overwhelming the way we teach it. So all I would encourage you to do is stick with us, come to the Blabs, come to the trainings on Wednesday, and just, take a little chunk every time and implement a little bit and just keep on moving forward. And you'll see at the end of a few weeks, you're going to have an understanding that so many of your compadres do not have. And you're going to really be able to dial things into a point where, well, when Kurt says, when you can take $1 and instead of it barely being $1.05 and turn it into $1.80 or $1.90 or $2, and you can do it every time, right? Now, it doesn't mean you're not going to get some variances. It might be $1.80, it might be $2.10, but you can always create profitability. You can always scale it up. What does your life look like when you can do that?
It's completely different.
Like, yeah. How does that change things for you?
Yeah,
like I can tell you, the people that I talk to, that it's like a whole different ball game for them, because a lot of people that are coming online and marketing online, maybe they have day jobs, or they have another business and they're trying to promote, or their existing business is not doing as well as it could.
Yeah.
And it's just like, boy, when you can start predictably scaling things up, that's life changing.
Yeah, I mean, in huge ways. I mean, the thing is it's interesting. I was listening to a friend and mentor, Shecky, Mike Dillard. He has a podcast. It's
great guy.
Self-Made Man, which is great. He really just talks about great entrepreneurs and how people are just doing different things to shape the world. And I remember just listening to that podcast this morning as I was getting some stuff done kind of around the house and just starting my day. And it's great to surround yourself with great, awesome, interesting people. And what I tell people is this: hey, if you really want to take a look at how to build an online business, follow us on these Blabs. Make sure that you follow Shecky and I on here as well too. Register for the breakout session that we have. Again, smag2.com/Webby. The link is in here. We've placed it in here as well too. So again, for those of you who are just joining us, and as we're kind of wrapping this whole thing up, let me tell you how the whole thing works. So Shecky and I have created an immersion process training that lasts a little over 90 days. And what we're doing is we're taking step by step. How do you start to set up and run ads for an online business? Now, it doesn't matter if you have an online business or an offline business. We're going to show you how to run ads successfully. Now, these processes and these step-by-step procedures, well, they've actually been used on clients who make 5 figures a year, 6 figures a year, 7 figures a year, 8 figures, and even 9 figures. I mean, step by step. So what we're showing you in this immersion process is every single Monday, we have a Blab where we talk about one of those crucial steps inside of the SMAG Profit Factory. So you can see all the recordings on Blab, or I put a link in here as well too, is we upload them inside of YouTube in the correct order that you should see them. Now, along the way, I'm interviewing experts. Now, what we call them is we call them expert geniuses. They're friends of mine who've spent millions of dollars in other ad networks like YouTube or Google or funnels or, hang on, this is really important. You always want to make sure, Shecky, that when your assistant comes in, you always make sure that you give her a key. All right. So here's the other thing, is what we're able to do is Shecky and I discuss the topic of the week here on Blab, the breakout sessions where we really dive into training. We're going to condense all of these trainings at the end of the immersion process at the end of the day, typically right around the end of March. And this is something we're going to package up and sell for over $1,000. So number one, if you're watching this for free, keep with us every single week on Blab. Number two, if you want to dive in and find out more in-depth training, again, we're going to sell it later, but you're going to get access to it for free, make sure you register at smag2.com/Webby. And also when you register there for the breakout session, you'll be put on our updated email list. We don't spam or anything else. We only send out good content. Shecky sounds like a great blog. Talk about the Blab here. But Shecky, affinity marketing, talked about it a lot. Lots of important things to learn from affinity marketing. I know you've been working on a training. We start working on the training actually on this Wednesday. I've looked it over. It looks great. Is there anything else that you want to say before we close this out on affinity marketing, or why people should make sure they check out the breakout session?
No, I mean, I'm looking at the clock and I see it's already 4 after the hour, and it's like, I can't believe that an hour just went by and we were just sitting here, just chatting about this subject. But it's interesting, and it's fun, and I'm always excited when I know we can provide insights to people and really help them elevate their game. And so, thank you for your compliments. If you want a little bit better explanation of this and you like to read, I did a blog post on the subject that's on the Social Media Ad Genius blog. So I think it's blog.socialmediaadgenius.com. And I think the blog post is called The Secret to Affinity Marketing. But if you enjoy reading, then that would be a good thing to see. But definitely, I have worked very hard on the slides this week. And they're pretty. And there's a lot of really good content, and we are. This is going to be a big week. Like, I am really excited for Wednesday because there's a lot of juicy material in the training that we're going to do on Wednesday. So today is really just an opportunity to kind of get you used to the subject and wet your whistle a little bit, as it were. But Wednesday we're going to really do that deep dive into this subject, and you're going to learn how all the tools work. And you're going to really learn how and why the affinity marketing is like a really key leverage point in your business, and how important it really is, and how it fits into your overall marketing scheme. So I hope to see you on Wednesday. And Kurt, again, thank you for a fabulous hour and for your leadership, and really appreciate you, and psyched for Wednesday.
All right, Shecky, I just put your famous blog article in here. Nick loves it when I put in lots of different links. So for everybody in here, hey, I just put in, hey, if you want to find out more about Social Media Ad Genius, you don't know who we are, you can go ahead and click on the link that says start here. Got a free little gift for you over there as well, too. Or if you already know that, hey, you watch this and you want to check out the breakout session, if you're watching live or the recording, click on that link for smag2.com/Webby. That'll get you inside of the breakout session. If you're watching the recording of this inside of the Social Media Ad Genius Profit Factory or Social Media Ad Genius training, make sure that you check out the Affinity Marketing Training. I'm telling you, the Affinity Marketing Recording training that we're going to put together that you're going to watch, it's going to make a huge difference in your marketing. Now, one last thing, Shecky, that I do want to close off with before we jump out of here. We've talked about, hey, look, 90 days, that's a lot of information to cover every single week. Hey, we have 12 steps. And then you say there's 4 keystones. There's a lot of information to learn. Well, what's interesting, Shecky, I mean, you and I have known each other long enough. In a year, your life can dramatically change. So can your business. 6 months, huge. 90 days, could you imagine, Shecky, going to like a college and saying, hey, look, in 90 days, I'm going to show you exactly how to advertise your business. And I'm going to show you how to follow up and monetize those people. In 90 days, I'm going to show you how you can grow and scale your business. Now, I have been to Harvard Business School inside of with a Harvard business professor when I worked for Microsoft, where executives would pay $20, $30, $40,000 for a 6-week education to increase profit margins for their boss or decrease expenses for their boss. But Shecky, what they were not teaching was how to make more money from your boss.
Yeah.
We're going to show you how you can scale your business. So what you do is you start watching these videos, and yeah, you're going to put it in some work, but you look back 90 days from now, you look back 6 months from now, I mean, your business will never, ever be the same. So I'm glad that we get to record these, Shecky. Glad I get to spend this time with you for the public, on a weekly basis. But man, stick with us. Make sure you're registered at one of these links because, Shecky, I don't know about you, but we've worked, like with Daniel's a perfect example. We've worked with a lot of amazing entrepreneurs that have just done huge things with their life, completely changed their life from following some insight and advice. I mean, Daniel's, kind of giving us a props up right here. I love it when people participate us because I see big change really start to happen. So anything else that you want to close out with as we wrap?
Yeah, I just want to say one thing as an asterisk to what you just said and using your Harvard example. Those learnings that are going on, that education that's going on is essentially teaching businesses 1, 2, 3, 5% increments. And in no way, shape, or form does it relate to what I would call what we see on our side, the snowball effect.
Oh,
so when you are staying consistent, as I know you constantly preach, Kurt, and for good reason, when you're staying consistent, when you keep learning a little bit more about your audience, when you can keep scaling, you keep putting out content, you have a content strategy, all those things start creating a tremendous amount of momentum, right? And as long as you continue to do that, that momentum is going to increase and increase and increase. And pretty soon you have a freaking freight train that is unstoppable, right? So 90 days in the big scheme of things is nothing. Like if you don't really have the attention span for that to understand this big picture that we're talking about, then I don't really know what to say. It's possible you're in the wrong place. Okay, because we're going to go through and we're going to show you all these little steps in 90 days or less. And if you just followed along and did that, by the end of that period, you would already have some pretty good momentum, right? Yeah. So there's nowhere else that you're going to be able to do that.
And I was going to say, you're going to be doing things that less than 1% of marketers are doing out there. Remember, we're not teaching you like any hacks or any tricks. We're saying, hey, look, if you're already going to invest the money in marketing, follow up with retargeting. Now, if you're going to invest the money in retargeting and follow-up, let's quantify the follow-up. Well, if we're going to quantify the follow-up, how do we monetize it? These are what any questions that any smart business owner should be asking. We're just quantifying it, and just to be perfectly open with you, is Shecky and I are like, we got to record a lot of videos. So we're like, let's just do it for the open public. Let's just record it over 16 weeks. Heck, let's do a 90-day immersion. The general public who watch and get it for free, the people who implement, those are some of our greatest success stories. But this is what we're all going to tie into a training because we have to document it anyway because this stuff works.
Yeah.
Seen it lots of times. So I'm just happy that everybody's here. Shecky, like I said, I've seen the training on Wednesday. I'm very excited. Make sure you guys register for the training. And I just appreciate everybody's time. And thank you so much for being here. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Shecky.
Thank you, guys. Yeah. Y'all have a great day.
All right. Take care, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.